there. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday with me, Jenna Serrano with Bold and Beyond. I am here today with Dr. Janet Starr Hull in the Holistic Kitchen, and Dr. Hull is going to be showing us a very important part of her detox program today, and I'm really excited to be here with her so that we can ask her some questions about it and share this really great info that's going to make us feel really good when we detox. So,
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Our first Wellness Wednesday of the New Year.
Yes! So hopefully you guys will, take away some good detox info since we need to get rid of some holiday crap. So what we have here is what is called French green clay. What is French green clay?
It is probably one of the most unique and important parts of my 10 Steps to Detoxification program. The French green clay was something that I discovered by accident through my environmental work in Eastern Europe back in the day. I was working on the former Soviet army bases in Bratislava, Czechoslovakia, and Krasno, Poland.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I found out through Roman Kafel, who was the attorney for Lech Walenska at the time, the president of Poland, that they use French green clay mined from France as a detoxing agent internally. Well, we've always used clays in the United States for topical face masks and detoxification, and bentonite clay is certified by the FDA as safe for internal use, but I do not agree with that. We can go into that at another time.
Okay.
But it's different. It's a clay. The bentonite can impact internally, and it can cause constipation and blockages, whereas the French green clay is what they call an Eleite clay,
Okay.
a Montmorillonite clay, and it powders and it ashes. It never hardens to that point. So they've used it in Europe internally and externally for humans, plant growth, and animal health for centuries.
Okay.
So I was intrigued by it, and I brought it to the United States. I actually brought it to the United States, and several companies do sell it. You can find it online in capsule form and in powdered form. But Walter Badet lives in France, and he has used it his entire life. He's a horseman, a horse whisperer, and he's always used it on his horses.
What's his name one more time?
Walter Badet, B-A-D-A-T.
His videos are really cool if y'all look him up online.
And I'll post the link to where you can get the clay from Walter after this video. I'll post it online. So I found Walter by serendipity and started using his clay, and it is phenomenal, and recommending his clay in my detox program, primarily because it has no adverse health effects.
Wonderful.
It won't cause constipation. It won't impact the digestive process. It can be used topically. You can pour the leftover clay on your plants or in your dog's food bowl. I mean, it's wonderful for all animals. So what I wanted to do, I get asked this question a lot, and that is, how do I use the clay? So I wanted to demonstrate that for you here in the Holistic Kitchen. What I've done is I've already prepared one, but we're going to go through the process of how you get from here to here. The clay, Walter calls this milk water. When you let the clay, I'll make it at night and let it sit on the counter overnight, and it forms this milk water. The larger molecules of the clay have sunk to the bottom of the glass, and so when you drink it, how about this stuff? There it sits. Okay.
There it is.
Now, what I like to do is...
That's the silt, like down in the bottom.
Yes, that's the larger molecules that didn't go into solution. What I like to do is mix it again and drink a second glass of it because I love this stuff. You really will be able to tell that it is working. You will. If you have, it's wonderful for cleaning the lymph nodes and the lymph system. So let's say you have a lymph node that's swollen. You will notice after you've been using the clay for a week, those lymph nodes will start to go down.
Well, I was going to ask you, so what purpose does the French green clay serve in your detox program and the process?
That's an excellent question, a very basic one. By nature, the clay chelates to toxins. And it can be a metal, a heavy metal, mercury. We've done before and after hair analyses on mercury levels that were toxic. After they did the clay for 4 to 6 weeks, those levels were down to reasonable levels. They weren't gone completely, but they were not high. They were not high. So a lot of people ask me, can you remove mercury? Yeah. Aluminum, tin, even radiation. And that's what I write in my books about the French green clay. That's really one of the most interesting stories in my book. When I was in Eastern Europe working on the Soviet Army bases, it was in the late 1980s, and Chernobyl was the nuclear power plant in Kiev, the Ukraine, that exploded. And when it melted down, the Soviets literally shipped in trainloads full of the French green clay and raised it, covered it in the French green clay because it contained the radiation.
What did they do with the clay after that?
Well, Chernobyl is still unoccupied, so it's still deserted because it will take hundreds and hundreds of years for that radiation to work its way out of half-life. But it's not, it's getting better over the years. That was 1986, and so, but it's still inhabitable. You cannot occupy even, well, some of the animals are coming back in some plants, but humans cannot occupy that area now. But the French green clay has eventually gone down into the soil, but it's, so did the radiation. So they used it to remediate the radiation at Chernobyl, which I thought was extremely interesting. So if you've had radiation poisoning, this is wonderful for prevention of radiation poisoning.
Right.
It helps with all toxic metals, and I believe it also helps with microorganisms. It'll help with candida. So it'll chelate to those toxins, and then you flush them down the toilet. Literally flush them down the toilet. So what you do is you take a teaspoon out of the, and this is a glass jar. If you order the clay from Walter, it'll come in a plastic baggie, so you'll want to turn around and put it in a glass jar. I should be using a wooden spoon or a plastic measuring spoon. I didn't think about that until just now. Walter is very, very specific about his recommendations on the clay. But again, his grandmother had him using the clay when he was just a kid, so he grew up on it.
Right.
And I actually make my own toothpaste with it. But you put a teaspoon in with a glass of water, or a cup of water. Take a wooden spoon, stir it, and then cover it with a cloth if you'd like, and let it sit overnight. And then when you wake up in the morning, you can do what I did, which was drink a glass full of it.
Or
first thing in the morning.
Or you're not required to let it sit overnight.
That's
right?
correct. It will not harm. See, I can drink this now. It's in solution. Like I said, I love this stuff. But see, I'm a geologist, and so I'm used to licking rocks.
Well, not like she licks rocks every day.
But a geologist, when a geologist goes out in the field,
taste?
if you want to find out what the rock is and the stone is, many times you'll taste. Anyway, the particles will not harm the body, but the reason that the milk water is recommended by Walter and those aficionados of French green clay is that the milk water is its purest form. It's in solution. The body doesn't even have to worry about digesting or passing anything through. It's totally in solution. And this clay will penetrate the blood-brain barrier. It will go from head to toe. It will cover your cells of the body, and it's wonderful when you're detoxing. Detox the liver, detox the mouth, detoxes your kidneys, your bladder. your cardiovascular system, and it's just wonderful for health and wellness, and it is a great detoxing tool. Again, the reason that I don't recommend the kaolinite clay or the bentonite clay is because if you were to do a little bit of an experiment and you would take the French green clay and wet it, and then you take bentonite clay and wet it, and then allow it to dry, your bentonite is going to cast.
Yeah.
The Eleite clays, the Montmorillonite clays will powder. You just go like that with it.
Wow.
So as it goes through the body, let's say
it doesn't stick. It's not going to stick.
Let's say you have diverticulitis, okay? You don't want bentonite clay getting into one of your diverticuli and sticking.
Yeah.
You want the French green clay to be able to get into that diverticuli, pull out the toxins
and move
and
out.
The waste and move right out.
Right.
Yeah. So it's wonderful in that respect, which is why I recommend it internally. Now, because the FDA hasn't certified this as food safe, that doesn't mean anything to me because the FDA has lost my respect. They lost my respect when they approved aspartame. But the French government, the French Department of Health has certified the French green clay as food safe.
Wonderful.
This comes from France, and so it is certified as food grade.
France, we come from France. Go ahead.
So when you get on Walter's website, clayforall.com, he has all kinds of clays, and it gets a little confusing sometimes because this is what you want to do is you want to look for the internal. So read the descriptions of his clay and make sure that you order the one that is recommended for internal use.
I want to show the viewers what this clay looks like through this glass here. It is very powdery, like Dr. Hull was describing. You could put it in your hand and blow it like fairy dust. That's how dusty it is. Also, I have used the French green clay to detox after getting a hair analysis from Dr. Hull, and it tastes a little bit like milk. It doesn't taste like grainy if you were to lick dirt. It doesn't taste like that, and it's not, doesn't really have a dirt taste. It has a very earthy taste, kind of like green tea a little bit. So,
a little kaopectate-ish, kaopectate, people take that for
right. Like
chalky,
what is that pink stuff?
Pepto-Bismol.
Pepto-Bismol. Yeah.
Kind of leaves that chalky.
Yeah, it does taste chalky like that, but it's not bad. So if you're thinking, oh my god, it's so gross, yuck, it's not gross.
What I do when I make my own toothpaste is I put it in a small container, and I make just a small batch at a time, but I'll take the French green clay in equal proportion to pure organic coconut oil, add a little bit of sea salt for the scrub effect, and then liquid silica, which I recommend for bone health. Shake up that little container, and that's my toothpaste.
Show us those pearly whites. She's got amazingly white teeth also. Do you have anything else?
This is really it for this live stream because it is a very common question that I get for how do I take the French green clay. It's fine, like Jenna was saying, if you don't have a chance to get it to settle down into the milk water, if you do drink it where more of its composition is dissolved in the water, hasn't had a chance to sieve itself down yet.
So you can stir it and drink the whole thing all the way down to the bottom, and it will not harm you. It's still going to have the same effect and do its job.
But for the manufacturer, or not the manufacturer, that's nature, for Walter, who literally gets this mined directly from the dried ocean beds. You know what? We didn't go over that, so I'll go over that here in just a second. His recommendation is to make the milk water out of it. And so I always go with the expert, and he is the expert on producing the clay. Where does it come from? Clay comes from dried seabeds or dried riverbeds. If you have a stream or a creek and you go through a drought period, you're going to have the clay, the
Right.
finer grain size molecules, because they've eroded themselves to the farthest point of erosion until they just go into their element, which would be calcium or silica.
Right.
So it's very, very fine, and it comes from dried Mediterranean seabeds. And one of the reasons that it's so nutritious is because the clay, like we had said, will chelate onto toxins and extract them from your cells and then excrete them out through the toilet. But because this is a Mediterranean seabed, it has phytonutrients in it, it has sea algae in it, such as seaweed.
Right.
So it's going to have iodine in it. It's going to have the minerals and nutrients in the clay.
Right.
So instead of having been eroded over time, blown by the wind, carried by the water in a stream, this has been allowed to deposit and settle down into the Mediterranean Sea, and then as the sea withdrew and it was exposed and dried out and now mined, it's rich in its sea nutrients.
Awesome.
So what's important when you detox is when you pull out a toxin, it leaves a little space, right, where that toxin was. Let's say it's a little glob of aluminum or mercury.
Right. Like a pimple coming
Yeah.
from your face. There's this.
Very good. This, then, as it's pulling out that toxin, it will replace and restore immediately in that cellular space nutrients.
That's amazing.
So breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. So remove the toxin and immediately replace it with something nutritious.
That's wonderful.
There are different clays from different parts of the world. There's a red elite clay from India. But India is so polluted, that's not my number one choice. This is my number one choice for sure. Montmorillonite clay can be found in Utah and in the salt flats of the western part of the United States. So they have some very good clays up there as well. So you'll want to look for your sources, but just make sure that it's an ILLITE, elite clay, which again, bentonite is not elite, it's bentonite, so it's not an elite clay.
Okay.
And just know that when you're using the clay, you are literally removing toxins, which increases your oxygen levels in your body, because a toxin is a heavy metal. So you're going to increase your oxygen, and you're going to be replacing it with healthy nutrients. So you're going to have a lot more energy.
Nice.
You'll feel it pretty quickly. And when you use the clay, if there are toxins that are sitting there on the runway waiting to take off down the toilet, you will have some reactions. Sometimes they're not very strong, sometimes they're very strong. Wherever you're having your reaction is typically where your toxins have been deposited. So let's say you go to the bathroom a little bit more, okay, you're cleansing the colon.
Right.
Or let's say you've had a rash and you're breaking out on the skin, okay, it's coming out, it's bringing it out.
Right.
So don't be afraid of that. You can always email my offices at janethull.com and ask questions if you have a detox reaction.
Right. And if you want to find out more about the detoxification process or Dr. Hull's detox program, you can go to janethull.com to find more information and to get a consult or get the detox program there.
So happy New Year. Bottoms up. Here's to detoxing your way into a healthy and happy 2020.
Cheers.
Love that stuff.